The Lagos traffic had trapped Marcus Chen for 40 minutes in the back of a yellow taxi, and he'd begun to wonder if accepting the consulting job in Nigeria had been a terrible mistake. His firm had sent him to audit a telecommunications company's expansion project, and after 3 days of spreadsheets and conference rooms, he'd decided to escape the hotel for actual Nigerian food. The driver finally pulled up to a modest restaurant in Victoria Island, its hand-painted sign promising authentic home cooking. Inside, ceiling fans pushed humid air around wooden tables, and the smell of grilled fish and spices made Marcus's stomach growl. He was studying the menu, trying to decipher the difference between egusi and ogbono soup, when someone laughed. A sound so genuine and unguarded that he looked up automatically. She sat 3 tables away with 2 other women, her head thrown back, her locks cascading past her shoulders. When she caught him staring, her smile didn't fade. Instead, she raised an eyebrow, amused rather than annoyed. Marcus looked away, embarrassed, but 5 minutes later, she appeared at his table. "You look lost," she said. Her accent wrapped around the words with a musicality he'd never heard before. "Completely," he admitted. "I'm trying to order dinner, but I'm not sure I'm pronouncing anything correctly." "You're not," she said, grinning. "But points for trying. I'm Amara." "Marcus." She slid into the seat across from him without asking, which should have felt presumptuous but somehow didn't. "First time in Lagos?" "First time in Africa, actually." "Well then, you need proper guidance. The jollof rice here is exceptional, and you should try the suya, trust me." She stayed while he ate, explaining each dish with the kind of passion that made food sound like poetry. Her friends eventually left with knowing smiles and finger waves Amara barely noticed, too busy telling Marcus about growing up in Enugu, her work as an architect trying to preserve historical buildings, while Lagos rushed headlong into modernity. "Everything old is supposed to be bulldozed for shopping malls," she said, frustration creeping into her voice. "As if we have no past worth keeping." Marcus found himself talking about his own work, usually something he found boring to discuss, but Amara asked questions that made him consider his career differently. What responsibility did he have when his audits recommended cuts that meant job losses? How did he reconcile efficiency with humanity? When the restaurant began closing, Marcus glanced at his watch and realized 3 hours had passed. "I should let you go," Amara said, standing. "Or," Marcus said, surprised by his own boldness, "you could let me walk you to wherever you're going next?" She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, American man, let's walk." They wandered through Victoria Island as evening settled over the city. Lagos transformed around them, generators rumbling to life as power flickered, street vendors setting up grills, the smell of plantains frying, music spilling from shops and cars. It was chaos, but Amara moved through it like someone reading a familiar story. She showed him her favorite spots: a bookshop specializing in African literature, a gallery featuring Yoruba contemporary artists, a corner where an old woman sold the best chin-chin in Lagos at each stop. Amara knew people, exchanged greetings in languages Marcus couldn't follow, laughed at jokes he didn't understand. He should have felt like an outsider, but Amara kept pulling him in, translating not just words but context, history, meaning. "You're good at this," he said as they shared a bag of chin-chin. "At what?" "Making things make sense, making space for people." Something shifted in her expression, pleasure mixed with surprise, as if she hadn't expected him to notice. Marcus's 2-week assignment stretched into 3, then 4. His firm didn't question it. The audit was complex, he explained, requiring thorough investigation. The truth was, he kept finding reasons to stay, because every evening he spent with Amara felt like discovering a new country within a country. She took him to a jazz club in Ikoyi, where Nigerian musicians reimagined Fela Kuti. They attended a midnight church service that lasted until dawn, full of singing that shook the building's foundations. They argued about architecture and urban planning while eating pounded yam, about American foreign policy while watching the sunset over the lagoon. "You romanticize this place," Amara said one evening. They sat on a beach in Lekki, watching fishermen drag nets through the surf. "You see adventure, I see home, with all its complications." "Tell me the complications," Marcus said. So she did. She told him about the corruption that meant simple permits took bribes and months of waiting, about the brain drain as her friends left for London, Toronto, Houston, about being a woman in a male-dominated profession dismissed in meetings, her ideas credited to male colleagues, about loving Lagos with a fierceness that sometimes felt like a burden, because the city broke your heart daily, even as it filled you with wonder. Marcus listened, and, unlike other men she'd dated who wanted her to be only bright and accommodating, he sat with the weight of what she shared. "I don't want to romanticize it," he said finally. "I want to understand it. Through you, I guess, if you'll let me." Amara looked at him then with an expression he couldn't quite read. Sadness, maybe, or recognition. "You're leaving soon," she said. "I could come back." "Could you?" It wasn't really a question. Marcus's last week in Lagos felt both endless and impossibly short. They spent every possible moment together, and the unspoken truth sat between them like a third presence. This had an expiration date. On his final night, Amara took him to Bar Beach despite the pollution, despite the chaos. They sat on the sand while the Atlantic crashed against the shore, dark and powerful. "I'm in love with you," Marcus said. Because leaving without saying it felt cowardly, Amara didn't seem surprised. "I know. I'm in love with you too," she said after a moment. "Which is inconvenient." Marcus laughed despite the ache in his chest. "Very inconvenient." "What do we do about it?" "I don't know," he admitted. "Long distance? I could visit, you could visit me in Boston. I could look for work here, or you could—" "Don't," Amara interrupted gently. "Don't plan my life around yours. I've seen that story. The woman who follows the man across the world and loses herself. I would never ask you to—" "I know you wouldn't. That's not the point." She took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "My work is here, Marcus. My family. My city. Everything I'm fighting for. Could you love me and let me stay?" It was the most honest question anyone had ever asked him. Marcus flew home, but Lagos followed him. He saw Amara everywhere. In the way Boston's fall colors couldn't compare to Lagos's saturated sunsets, in conversations with colleagues who'd never had to think about whose comfort their systems were designed for, in the hollow feeling of his apartment that had seemed perfectly adequate before they talked daily across 7 time zones. Video calls where Amara appeared tired from another battle with the Historical Preservation Board, or triumphant because she'd saved a 1920s colonial building from demolition. Marcus told her about his growing dissatisfaction with work that felt increasingly meaningless. 3 months after leaving Lagos, Marcus made a decision. He requested a transfer to his firm's African operations, found an apartment in Lagos, and booked a one-way ticket. He didn't tell Amara. When he showed up at her office on a Tuesday afternoon, she was presenting designs to a client. Marcus waited outside, suddenly terrified he'd made a catastrophic mistake. What if she'd moved on? What if his grand gesture was actually just American presumption, assuming his presence was a gift rather than an imposition? Amara emerged from the conference room, stopped dead when she saw him. "You're here," she said. "I'm here. I got a job in Lagos. I found an apartment I'm staying if you want me to stay, but I'm not here to save you or fix anything or be the hero in some story. I'm here because you were right. I couldn't love you and ask you to leave everything, but I could leave everything and choose you. Choose this." Amara stared at him. People flowed around them in the building's lobby, but Marcus only saw her face, trying to read whether he'd gotten this catastrophically wrong. Then she smiled. That same unguarded smile from the restaurant months ago. "You really moved to Lagos," she said. "I really moved to Lagos." "You're insane." "Probably." Amara closed the distance between them, kissed him in front of her curious colleagues, and Marcus felt like he'd finally figured out what home meant. It wasn't a country or a city. It was this woman, her locks smelling like shea butter, her laughter in his ear, promising him nothing except the complicated, beautiful reality of building a life together across the distance they'd already crossed.